How's it going, guys? So we're down here at the boat. We're having an issue with our reservoir tank leaking. So after running it for a while, keeping the cap on, I noticed some water in the lower cowling. Found that it was coming out of here. There's some bubbles that started leaking out of here. So it must be a little warped or cracked. Regardless, we have to replace this tank. So in order to do that, we got to loosen up these bolts. As you can see, I already started to do. Disconnect the hose here, cut that zip tie, disconnect one at the bottom, which is the intake from the other tank, the main tank, and then disconnect the electric here. So working on that now, and yeah, we'll show you how to get back to it. For this lower one here, you're going to need to use a regular wrench. The socket won't fit in here with the lower cowling, but these two you could use a 1/2 inch wrench. That one's a 1/2 inch as well. All right. For this bottom one, you'll notice the socket's a little tight in here getting under the lower cowling. So just get a regular wrench. I loosened it, and I'm just going to use pliers, loosen that up there to get the last one off. And the next thing we'll do is disconnect the electric here. All right, when you're taking this off, there's metal grommets in there with a washer. If you get the Quicksilver Mercury brand, it's not going to come with these grommets, so you're going to have to save it. I got an aftermarket tank, which I'll show you, but make sure you don't lose these when you pull it out. The washer and the screw are there. And then this metal grommet is inside the rubber grommet right there, so you don't want to lose those. And all the rubber is for is to make sure you don't over tighten it. So now we got the bolts off. We're going to disconnect this line here, disconnect the line underneath, and disconnect the electric right there. All right, so cut the zip tie, pop this one off. There's a zip tie that holds the electric on right here. You got to cut that, and that'll allow you to disconnect these two right here, which they should just unclick. It's just like that. Those pop out. See those connectors there. All right, so we got it off. Dump the extra oil into the tank. You have this hood for the side, this one for the bottom, and then your 2 wire connections. And then there's your bolt fittings for screwing the new one on. So we'll get to the new tank now. All right, again, this is not a Mercury one. This is an aftermarket one. You can see this one came with the grommets in it, the metal and the rubber. It also came with the hose line here, which I'm just going to pull off because the other one's still connected. But if you get a Quicksilver True Mercury part, that's not, it was back ordered, so I got this one, but it won't come with any of these, I believe, or the hose. So make sure you hold on those when you take off the old tank. Before connecting these electrical connections, I like to put some dielectric grease on there, just to keep it from corrosion. So if you want to, you can add that on there as well. So I like to try and do the connections before I bolt it on. It's just easier to work with. So I'll hook up the electrical first. I'll put the bottom, this tube here, which goes right here. And then I'll pop this off, and I'll do the side one last once it's mounted to the tank. Right, so they're clipped in. Now we'll do the bottom hose onto here and zip tie it. All right, so just got that bottom one on there, zip tied it, got the electrical on, zip tied it here. There was a little thing I had to punch out there, but there's a groove there you can put the zip tie through just so it doesn't pop off at any point. And then lastly, we're going to connect this one here. We're going to zip tie it, tighten the bolts up, and then I'll show you how to fill it up. All right, it's all on, hooked on the bottom, electrical's good. So now to fill it up, you got to start by taking off the top cap here. And what you're going to do is you're going to run the boat, and as air is allowed to get in here, this is pressurized, as you can see. It'll overflow, it's not tightened. It's going to start drawing oil from the main tank. It's going to fill this up. And when we get it all the way to the top, and right as it gets to the top, tighten up the cap, and it'll be good to go. So we'll do that now. All right, so with the extra oil I had, I filled it up to about here. Now I'm going to run the motor, and it'll get all the air out, fill it up to here, throw the cap on, we'll be good. Yeah, just to avoid any confusion there, I actually used the oil from the old tank that I just took off, and I just dumped it into the top here to fill it up to the point it's at now. If you wait to fill it up all by the motor completely, it's going to take a long time. So if you're looking at that sticker there as a reference point, you can see it's slowly filling up, but it does take a little while to do it that way. So fill it as much as you can just by pouring in the top, and then for that last little bit, run the motor. All right, just about at the top. Yeah, and you really want to get it right to the top of the brim there. That's what I'm trying to show you. Right until it overflows out of the tank is where you want it. So this was just bad timing. Right as I was going to adjust the camera to show you guys myself putting the cap on, my buddy here walked by and kind of asked what I was getting into on the boat. So I'm explaining to him here that I had to replace the tank and all, but all I'm doing is I'm waiting for that oil to get right to the brim, and then I'm tightening on that cap so it doesn't overflow. All right, so now topped up, lid's on nice and tight. We'll clean all this off and we're good to go. All right, so just want to jump on here real quick. You guys saw that I got the new tank on there and got it all filled up. But I did notice a little bit of oil leaking again out of the cap area of the brand new tank that I just put on. So I was kind of confused by this. So I looked at the old tank, and sure enough, inside the cap of the old tank, there's a gasket. There's like an O-ring in there. And when I pulled it out, it was cracked. So that was definitely 100% the source of the leak on the old tank that I just took off, which is the original one. I don't know if I over-tightened the cap at one point and cracked it or whatever it is, but that was the issue. So I could have saved myself a ton of time and a ton of money by just checking the gasket first to see if there was one under there, which I had an idea. I thought there was, but I just never actually looked. And I already had the tank on my boat, this new one, so I just figured I'd swap it out. But sure enough, that was the issue. So I look at I didn't know why the new one was leaking too, so I thought maybe that one was cracked, the new tank's gasket. But when I looked at it, it didn't even have one. So the problem with getting aftermarket stuff is sometimes they're quality, and this one was. It didn't come with the gasket at all. And I couldn't take the old one out from the old tank because it was ruined, it was cracked. So I called a local shop down here, and I described the part, gave my serial numbers and all, and lo and behold, they actually had the gasket in stock. So here it is. It's a small rubber gasket that goes in the cap. I actually they sell that part, and they also sell the whole assembly, which is the cap with the gasket already in it itself. But if you're looking for just the gasket number, it's 27-42999T, and that's Quicksilver part. So that's really all I needed the whole time, was just that gasket. Again, should have checked that first, but I didn't even know for certain that it would, it had one. But now that I know, I know. So just don't over tighten that cap when you put it on there. You don't want to break that gasket. I have a new one now, a spare, just in case, by buying that extra one. But that was definitely the problem. Now, the reason I just went ahead and swapped the tank anyway, even though, I didn't know there was an O-ring, but regardless, is because the float switch in those tanks go bad. And what happens is your boat will start giving you an alarm. It's like a 4-beat steady alarm, and it'll say, you're tapping into your reservoir tank instead of your remote tank, your main tank on your boat. And that's just the float switch getting stuck. But the problem is on those reservoir tanks that are attached to the motor is it's not separate from it. You can't replace just the sensor, you have to replace the whole tank. So I didn't know if the sensor was bad as well. So either way, it's not a big deal that I swapped the whole tank, but just know that if that's your issue, that's a common reason why those tanks need to be replaced. But if you're having a leaking problem, definitely check the lid first and the gasket and make sure that's not cracked, because that was my issue. So just wanted to follow up with that. But appreciate you guys watching. Hopefully you got some insight and knowledge on how to do that, and I'll check you in the next video. All right, thanks guys.